Land Trust, working in Kane, Kendall, Will, and DuPage counties in northeastern Illinois. There's a series of land trusts that we belong to, an organization that are across the United States that are called local land trusts. We do similar things that the large-scale ones do, like maybe Nature Conservancy you've heard of, but we work in deeper focus in these 4-county area. We're being drawn to the west in DeKalb, LaSalle, and Grundy counties. Our main office is in Naperville. We have a satellite office also in Montgomery on the edge of Aurora, out near Route 47. At the McDonald Farm in Naperville, we have 60 acres in all. You can see on this picture where the road would have come completely through the farm had it not been for the protection afforded this property with a conservation easement. One of the things we do is place conservation easements on properties that put permanent protection for the property. 60 acres, 49 of it is in organic vegetable crops, a CSA, consumer supported agriculture. We also have butterfly gardens, solar panels, native prairies, rain gardens, the organic farm, wind turbines, rainwater harvesting, 2 different size rainwater harvesting systems, and other permeable pavers on a parking area, and also permeable concrete, which is one of the newest surfaces that you can have, that you can come and see. So we're trying to build the farm as a green technology place where you can see all these cool things in one stop. What I like to talk to people about is the connection to nature. The new science is that we don't just have a like for nature, that it's something we absolutely need in our lives. And when you think about our need for pets and birds and how we want animals around us in our yards, we go on vacation to Wisconsin or Canada, we go to the Hawaii and we enjoy these outdoor areas. If we understand that nature is soothing to us and we can get reinvigorated by going out in nature, then we don't look to drugs or counseling to help solve our needs. We can solve our own needs by getting outside and embracing the animal that we are. So as Homo sapiens, we are animals, we're mammals, and a lot of people don't think of themselves in the animal world as the same, but we are, and embracing some of that will help. And that's what I'm doing with some of the programming, is restoring that feel. So in my community, this is what I saw in my area, and I called the city and I said, well, why aren't you going to do something about this? And they said, well, we don't have any money, we can't do anything. And I learned at an early point that there's going to be, everything that you tackle in life, there's going to be an obstacle thrown in front of you. Somebody's going to say, well, we don't have any money, or we tried that once and it doesn't work, or whatever the case, my husband won't let me, or my mom won't let me, or whatever the case may be. And successful people get beyond those obstacles. They find a way to make it happen. So I told the mayor, that's sad that nobody wants to clean up the stuff. And the answer I heard back was, well, why don't you do it? So I did. I said, okay, fine. I got my kids. I put an ad in the paper and I said, on Saturday morning, we're going to clean up things in our town. And we got about 30 people and we started cleaning up the river. And you see there's smiles on my kids' faces, because even though you're dirty and you're sweaty, doing good deeds for the earth makes you feel better. And so that feeling of self-worth is better, and you're tired at the end of the day, but you feel like you did something. And it caught on. So now, 22 years later, and over 700 tons of garbage later pulled out of the DuPage River, we have a cleaner, healthier river, and we're doing these things on the Fox River also. as well as other things like water quality testing, scientific testing, as well as biological testing of the waterways to try to help them along. My connection is getting people in it. If you're not in the water, if you don't see it, touch it, smell it, canoe in it, fish in it, you're not going to be engaged in the river, and you're not going to care as much. If you don't care, then you're much more likely to throw things in it. And I know for a fact that my kids, having done this and pulled this junk out of the river, they're not going to be putting it in themselves, and they've done cleanups on their own in other cases. So we engage as many people. We've had, I think we're up to 4,000 participants in this program over the years also. So we've engaged a lot of people in a lot of communities on it. And that's what I'm trying to do with the programs that I run, is to package them up and show people how easy it is to do it. So you can earn a sign for your yard or your schoolyard. And the idea is that some of these concepts that I'm going to go about today are easy to do. And the sign is just a marketing way to show that I earned this and I'm proud of it. And it's not just a area that I haven't taken care of. It's a functional part of my yard, and it's working. There's one also for non-residential sites. So this one we use on schools and churches and factory sites, office buildings, you name it. And we've had a lot of support for the program. And between these two programs, we cover almost any piece of property. We can implement these conservation measures on any size lot, whether it be a tiny little house lot or a 100-acre campus. So the concepts are pretty simple things, and it's not rocket science. It's very easy for people to accomplish, and you can ask me questions anytime about what it would take, and I'll go through some of these things with you. The first thing is that plants are not just decorations. We've been too much filling our yards full of, oh, this looks cute over there, that looks so sweet, I just put this here because it's so darling, kind of a thing. And when I'm teaching classes about, understand that plants are the only thing on this planet that can convert sunlight into food. So plants are essential for all life. They're cleaning the water, they're cleaning the land, the air we breathe has been created and cleansed by these plants. So it's essential for all life on the planet. Plants. This is a plant-based planet, so we cannot survive without plants. So kind of getting that base understanding that plants are essential, we have to have them. Then the very next step is that not all plants are created equally. If you were hungry and I put it on the table, I put a roll of sod in a geranium and a bowl of broccoli, you could quickly scan that table and figure out which is a food source for you, and you'd go right to the broccoli. Well, the same way, all of our landscaping is a table, and the birds and insects of our region are looking across this landscape, and they're trying to figure out what's there that I can use. So in this picture, the hummingbird instinctively knows that that native plant is a food source, and they home in on that. So we'll go into, when I talk about what we're trying to change, the idea is change things for the better, change things for things that will add to the environmental impact of an area. Here's the thing, the plants are the magic. So we established that plants are essential. Look on the far left on the red arrow, that is grass, turf grass that we've been using in our yards. And the trick that these plants have done over the years is evolve with strategies that help them be sustainable in northern Illinois. This is the prairie state, and the prairie plants are evolved, are different, are better, more sustainable, and more functioning than other plants would be. Look at the root systems. Some of the plants are going down to 15 feet, deeper than even an oak tree would go. And they don't need rain. They can get groundwater in many cases. The other strategies on some of the plants is to create this fine root system that is like a sponge. So we're going to get rain every April and May, and we're going to have a drought in July and August. So the plants absorb and hold the water that we get in April and May, and they use it to live through the drought in July and August. And I'll show you some pictures of that exactly happening. So with grass, you can buy it in a roll. You can see it has no root structure to speak of. It's not from here, it's from Europe, and it was brought over as a rich man's surface. It's very costly, and it's very needy. It needs a lot of fertilization and cutting and core aeration, all these different things that we have to do to keep the lawn living. Thomas Jefferson was one of the first ones to bring over grass, and he was trying to point out that I'm rich and I'm the president of the United States. I have resources to have this expensive grass on Monticello. Well, we've now become the default landscape. Grass is covering the biggest covering in 39 of the lower 48 states. So in Illinois, for example, there's more grass than there is soybeans or corn production on productive fields, and yet grass gives us no product back, and it's actually negatively productive because it costs so much money. Look at the numbers. $40 billion of grass care yearly and 20 million acres. So you can understand how I'm not promoting that we're going to get rid of grass completely, but we certainly could shift away from the huge amount of grass we have covering when we understand how much it's costing us to have that. So I show people what a yard might look like if you didn't have grass. And some of the tricks we're using to make this pretty are you clump plants and you have recognizable features like fence lines. In this case, there's bird houses, could be a bird bath or a bird feeder, rocks, logs, those kinds of things to decorate around the plantings. And space between the plantings, our eye is looking for structure. So by creating some structure and looks like it was planned, then we can create these natural landscapes that are beautiful and functional. So again, the difference between functional working plants and aesthetic plants, or ones that are inert as far as what they give. So a lot of what we filled our yards with are these inert plants, and if you just look where they came from, all the daylilies are Asiatic lilies, so they're from Asia. A lot of the problems we're having with invasive plants, buckthorn has come from Europe, and honeysuckle came from the Orient area. So if you trace back where these plants came from, a lot of times you can find why they're not functioning here in northern Illinois. So look at this yard here, and this has very little grass, and how pretty it could be, and there's less maintenance on these areas. Whether you have no grass or reduce the amount of grass that you might have had, you're also increasing the infiltration of water, you're feeding wildlife, you're improving the soil. Not a lot of people think about the good black soil that we have in our area, and it was created by these native plants. In the roots of the native plants were all these organisms that fed the soil and improved the soil. And these plants are creating soil as they work. Every year, 25% of the plant root is sloughed into the organic material of the soil. So it's improving the soil conditions for itself, making it more sustainable as it goes on. And we can use those same functions to make our yards and our gardens better. The term phytoremediation is a term that we use to say that plants are removing pollutants, both out of the soil, the air, and water. They will clean the environment. They eat gas and oil. For example, prairie dropseed is being used at BP Amoco to mitigate the gas and oil on a gas station lot. So these plants are eating the spilt gasoline and metabolizing it, breaking it down, and utilizing the gas and oil to feed itself. And so in the same time, it's cleaning up the spills that we have from our use of the gas station. Eutrophication is a term that they use for water carrying excess nutrients. All of the water in northern Illinois is suffering from eutrophication at some point. The Fox River, certainly DuPage River, all of our waterways, lakes, ponds, streams are all having problems with excess nutrient load. And how this affects you is the things that we most care about in the food chain, like fish and dragonflies and the other life, the birds that are living along our creeks and rivers, they can't get as much nutrient load from the water because of the low oxygen levels. The nutrients are causing a high plant growth in the water. So the green water you see there is algae. We have problems with milfoil and duckweed and a variety of these plants that grow rich in this nutrient water, and they eat up all the oxygen in the water so that the fish don't have oxygen to work at. So we're having fish kills, and we're having other problems with this over-nutrified water. So here's an example. This is in Naperville, and this pond, the homes that are around this pond, everybody loves this pond. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's clear. There's frogs and turtles and fish, very good bass fishing. There's herons that are feeding on there. It's a beautiful lake, and there's a path around the lake, and the homes that back up around Lake One are just happy, and it's just a pretty place to have your home. The problem is on Lake 2, everybody hates this lake, and they have geese all over the place, and the goose droppings and the smell of the water, you can see the milfoil on the water there. The shoreline's eroding, all kinds of problems with this pond, and nobody likes living around Pond 2. Well, the thing that makes it perfect is that it's the same pond. They're actually mirror ponds on either side of a road, and there's a culvert in between Pond 1 and 2, and the culvert necks it down to the point that the water doesn't exchange very much. So they act like different ponds, but what you're seeing is the difference between the plants. So in this picture, look at the landscape. It's native plants all the way down to the water. And the plants are removing the nitrogen and phosphorus from the water and making this lake clean and clear. In the next slide, you've got grass, and the grass is making it good for geese. Geese like an open area. They like the vista of looking across. They're very worried about coyotes, and they will come to this lake by the hundreds and cause other water quality issues in the system. So the shoreline erosion would be solved, as well as the aesthetics and the geese problem, and a lot of the problems if you change the landscaping. Another project I've worked on, this one in my own hometown, the Park District got a piece of property when the subdivision was built, and they took a wetland. The developer took the wetland, put some dirt on it, and gave it to Park District for a park area. Well, part of the park where the wetland was just never could be used. It was supposed to be a soccer field, and it just flooded every time it rained. So I got a grant, and we restored the wetland. We dug it back out, and we created habitat. On Tuesday and Wednesday, they sculpted the thing. Thursday and Friday, it rained. Well, by Saturday morning, the thing was loaded with frogs. And the Park District was quite concerned, like, where did all these frogs come from? And that's the power of nature. I don't know where the frogs came from, but they're there. And nature, the power of nature, the next day, there was herons all over the lake, and they were eating the frogs. And at nighttime, there were raccoons coming and eating frogs. And by by the end of the week, there was not thousands of frogs, there was only dozens of frogs, and they were hiding, scared to death of all the predators that came. So the thing is that there is balance. You don't have to add frogs, you don't have to take frogs away, you don't have to go find some crickets. Where would I put crickets in here? That all of this stuff gets taken care of if we just create some habitat. So when you look at the very best, prettiest birds in our region, and you'd say, well, I want those for my yard, but we're not doing anything to bring those to our yard. So none of these birds will come to a bird feeder. And even the other birds, like cardinal or a blue jay, they will come to a bird feeder to take a snack. And I look at a bird feeder as like a McDonald's. You can go to McDonald's and have lunch today with no ill effects. That's fine. But if you ate at McDonald's every single day, three meals a day, you could not be healthy with that diet. And the same thing goes with these birds. They cannot get their entire diet from a bird feeder. It just would not work. So these birds in particular are looking for bugs and berries. And every bird in Illinois eats bugs at one time or another, even eagles. So you don't think about it. You don't realize that you put up a wren house, and what does a wren eat? They never come to your bird feeder. They're eating bugs and berries. So these birds are feeding on other things that we're not paying attention to. If you don't have these birds in your yard, it's because you haven't provided habitat. You haven't provided what they need. They don't come for a chat, and they don't come for a cup of coffee, whatever. They're looking for food. It's a rough life out there, and if you have something for them, they will come. If you don't, you're not going to see them. And so the cedar waxwing in the bottom center, is one. If you have berries, he will be there. So viburnums, serviceberry, chokeberries, there's a lot of native shrubs that have these juicy berries, and if you provide that function for them, they will be there. A lot of the other ones, the bluebird on the top right and the meadowlark in the center top, are bug eaters. The oriole and the tanager and the two top left and lower right corner are berry fruit eating birds, and the bunting in the bottom will eat fruit and bugs. This is what we're making habitat for geese, and it's no surprise that we have thousands of geese in our area. We make these ponds with the mowed edges, and what's silly is that this isn't even a good place for people. So in the lower right hand corner, you wouldn't want to throw a blanket out there and have a picnic. You just know that the grass has been sprayed, there's no dandelions or weeds in it, so there's been chemical application to that area, and the goose poop is going to be everywhere. They don't get much nutrients from grass, and it goes through them very, very quickly. So it's going in, coming out all over the place, adding more nutrient load, which causes even more problems in the pond. And if you didn't have that look, could you live with this look? Look how pretty that is. On the right side, right at the water, there's a pointed plant that's called an arrowhead. Those are actually growing in the edge of the pond. So that's what I'm trying to sell is, if we didn't have this, could you live with this? And look how clear the water looks. It's blue, and you can even see the reflection of a cloud in the water. Monarchs, this is a migration phenomenon that happens right in our area. We've heard a little bit about it, but kind of understanding that we've caused the crash. So this picture is showing a monarch caterpillar right in the middle of downtown Lisle, right between the train station, city hall, the police station, all these urban areas, cars and everywhere. We created some habitat by making a little rain garden, and the monarchs found it, laid their eggs, and now we are part of the migration. So we can do this if you want to do it, and kind of understanding that these natural landscapes are doing more than what we really know they're doing. And it can be documented, but understanding that a surface like this is providing function and ecological value. I'm working on a program now to create a grass replacement product. So we talk about grass being bad, but what would you put there? What would be the alternative? And one of the things would be this thing I'm designing. It's called a meadow, a pollinator meadow. And it would look similar to this picture. And on large corporate campuses, on schoolyards, churches, and places where there's many acres of grass, we could convert some of those grass areas to this pollinator meadow and create habitat for a variety of creatures that could enjoy the property more than they do now. Grass has zero wildlife value. Look at some of the pretty milkweed. This one is a dry-loving milkweed. Got a beautiful orange blossom. It's only about knee-high. And I bring these pictures to people because they think that milkweed is that tall, gawky-looking thing that I see growing along the roadside. And that is a milkweed. It's a common milkweed. But there are some beautiful milkweeds that can be easily utilized in our landscapes that can provide the same function in a prettier, shorter version. The swamp milkweed is another one. It's got a pretty orange blossom and very thin, fine leaves. It can grow in the shade area and wet area also. And again, another host plant for the monarch. The milkweed in general is kind of an interesting plant. It's poisonous. So it developed some poisons so that the rabbits won't eat it, deer won't eat it, your dog won't eat it. So it's protecting itself by being poisonous. Well, the monarch said, well, nobody wants that poisonous plant, I'll take it. And they have evolved to eat the poisonous plant, and they become poisonous. So birds don't want to eat a monarch. And the monarch then protects itself by ingesting this poison and bringing the poison into the adult phase. So monarchs are orange, and that's the #1 color of butterfly throughout the world is orange. A lot of them mimic the color of the butterfly. The viceroy, for example, has made a life out of mimicking the monarch. And birds think that the viceroy is poisonous when they are not, because they don't eat milkweed. But they survive because they've mimicked the monarch. In the adult phase, don't eat the milkweed anymore. Now they are feeding nectar. So they will pollinate plants. And when you think about the pollination, it's a pretty interesting concept. The plant doesn't want to make a flower. Flowers are very costly to the plant. They have to spend a lot of energy making this flower. They make the flower they have a partnership with these pollinators. Okay, I'll make you a flower, but then you have to pollinate me, and I need the pollen transfer to survive. So it's a partnership with these pollinators, and we don't really pay attention to it or understand that every tomato that we eat, every pepper and squash has a flower on those plants, and they need the pollinators. Here at the McDonald farm, we have the organic vegetables. We have bees, organic honey hives that we're growing so that there's additional pollinators here to increase the productivity of the crops. So in your own garden, by having native plants and pollinator-friendly things, you'll draw pollinators, which will in turn help your garden, and you get more productivity of your peppers and plants because you have bees and these pollinators there. And there's a lot of misconception about bees. The bees you get stung by, the little German sweat bees or the wasps and hornets, are not native bees. They're not the pollinator ones that we're looking for. The pollinating bees, they don't want to sting you. You have to go out of your way to get stung by them because they're so busy doing their work. The last thing they want to do is sting you and have their stinger ripped off, and the one that stings you will actually die. So they certainly don't want to die. You know, they have a need to live on too. So they only sting you as a last resort, and the pollinator ones are not interested in stinging you at all. So this migration of the monarchs and the pollinators, this is a wonderful story. For them to go from Mexico up to Canada, they have to fly thousands of miles. They can average 25 or 30 miles a day, 4 to 6 generations of monarchs to make it to Canada and back. So you can see one of the migrations is going right through Illinois. We're part of the migratory route, and we have to have milkweed for them to lay eggs and the babies to hatch and continue on with the migration. So it's critical that we have the habitat here to allow this migration, which has been happening for thousands of years, to keep on going. Trees. I do a lot of education about trees. There are good trees and there are bad trees. And people look at me funny and say, well, why do you say this is a bad tree? And the difference is, what ecological function is it getting? So you can see with the oak tree, 543 different species of moth and butterflies use it. 60 different species of birds, mammals, and other animals use this tree. The wood from an oak is used for a variety of purposes, very high value for us to use, and yet we're declining in the number of oaks we have in our region. We're growing less quality trees. There's a question from Deb P. I am wanting to change my yard from turf to buffalo grass. Is that a good idea, and how do I do it? Yes, it is a good idea. Buffalo grass is not really native to Illinois. It's native to a little area to the west of us, like out Colorado and some of those areas, but it grows very well here. We have buffalo grass growing at the McDonald farm for a demonstration area. You might not want all buffalo grass because of anything you have one of, it's what's called a monoculture, so it doesn't have much diversity. So for example, buffalo grass is good, but it doesn't have any flowers, so it's not going to be really attractive pollinators. So you gain something. You don't have to mow it every week. You can mow it if you're having a party, but you don't need to mow it all the time. But certainly reducing the amount of grass, the regular turf grass we have, and increasing the number of native plants that you have will bring more birds and butterflies and wildlife to your area. Cut down on your expense of mowing and the time it takes to do the mowing. We have, as far as how to do it, you can buy plugs or you can buy seeds to grow some of these plants. Most of the time for homeowners, we're recommending using plugs. So you buy little plants and you put them in the ground and you let them propagate into the area you have. And when I talked earlier about clumping the plants, you buy 3 or 5 of a variety and keep them together in a clump, and that way it's easier to weed it, it's easier to harvest seeds from it, it's easier to kind of keep it looking nice that way. We have a trouble with how much impervious surfaces we're putting out on the ground. So in past times, water would infiltrate into the ground and be absorbed by the ground and absorbed by these native plants. And now we're paving over things. We're putting up houses and driveways and highways and all these impervious surfaces that are making water run off and flushing it into the river systems around us. And it's causing even more environmental damage. One of the answers would be going back to pervious pavers, going back the way it was in the cobblestone streets of Europe. This pavers can be lifted when they're bumpy. If you had to cut through a road to put a pipe through it, you can lift the pipe, lift these cobblestones up, put your pipe in and put them back down again. All the water from this street in my community of Warrenville 1 mile of pervious pavers is allowing that water to infiltrate. And one of the things that's good about it is the street is never slippery because there's never any water puddling and creating any ice. And there's warm air that comes up through the pavers that tends to melt some of the snow. You can see in this area that besides where the plow was, how clean the pavement is from the air movement. So how it's supposed to work is, especially on the high areas, water is supposed to infiltrate into the ground, and then over a period of time, it will work its way up into the wetland area. And the problem is that we're paving over the high areas. That makes a nice place to build. And so how it used to work, where that water would infiltrate, is not able to happen anymore because of the impervious surfaces we're putting on. So now what has to happen is, with the inability for the water to penetrate into the ground, we're getting it run off. So you can see in this depiction how water will go on the surface, carry pollutants, whether it be oil, chemicals from the lawns, places, dirt, soil. Water is a very good transfer medium for chemicals and dirt. And it washes into the wetland, and the wetland is supposed to dissipate that water and get rid of it. And that's not hydrologically how it works. So the water sits in the wetland, doesn't go down like it should because of the hydrology of how a wetland works. So I get called a lot to come out to these areas and help people with it. And this is oftentimes what I see. You have a drain head in your yard, and you can see in the top of the photo that the area is much higher, and it's pitched by an engineer to drain to this drain head. And in this picture, what we're doing is we're creating some plantings in between where the water is coming and the drain head, so that we can intercept some of those pollutants and filter through the water and keep it back out of the drain head. Many times these drain heads are far away from the river, so people say, well, I don't live anywhere near the river, so I'm not having any effect on the river quality. And in fact, they don't see that that drain that they have in their yard is connected to their either their detention pond or to the local creek. And you can tell in the top of the picture, this stuff is going to move downstream. And if you were a fish, it's very clear to see which area you'd want to live in, because you have to see your prey. When you're hungry, you have to go catch it. And if the visibility is cut and there's pollutants in the water, you're going to leave that section of the stream. Other things like clams and mussels and macroinvertebrates, they have no way of moving around. So they are just killed, or the habitat is poor and they can't keep existing in where the water quality is bad. The cumulative effect of those homes all feeding into our river systems, which wash down into another one. All of our region, the water is going into the Mississippi River from our area. So the Fox River, the DuPage, Salt Creek, all of these rivers end up feeding into the Mississippi. And the nutrient load that it's bringing to the Mississippi is a problem. The salt levels are a problem. There's a lot of issues that we're contributing to. And there's a dead zone at the Gulf of Mexico by New Orleans that is bigger than the size of New Jersey, where the nutrient load is so high that the plants are using the oxygen up, and the shrimp and the other things that would live in those coastal communities can't live there anymore. So we've created a dead zone there and on lakes all along the way. So I'm showing you a picture here. If I said on the left or right, which side has butterfly habitat? Which side is absorbing water when it rains? Which side has deep roots? Which side has to be mowed every week? Which side is blooming in the middle of a drought in July last year? Full bloom in the middle of a drought. And yet, which one do you have in your yard? Which one is the dominant landscape at your school or your church or in 39 of the lower 48 states across the United States? What are we putting on our landscape, and does it make sense to you? As a marketing guy, I found this picture to be the most effective to say, you know, look at the stark differences between the left side and the right side of this picture, and which one would you want if you had a choice? And of course, we do have a choice of what we choose for our landscapes. So how pretty are some of these native landscapes? And because of the plants are 10,000 years old, there's a rich history of uses. So this purple liatris, it's called blazing star. It was used to color Native American blankets and bone set and wild quinine. There was medicinal purposes. Even the heart medicine digitalis came from a native plant, and they thatched roofs with native plants, and there's something for every different area of your yard. There's very dry loving plants. There's even a cactus that lives in Illinois, and a yucca that is native to Illinois, as well as wetland species and things that grow in the shade. We can have it all. And as far as kids being able to use the property, so in this picture I like the fact that there's homes and there's natural areas for kids to go out and play. Many times kids are in the house, they're playing their video games, and they're not getting out and experiencing nature because there is no nature near to them. We think that the subdivision is where people live and the critters have to live in the forest preserve. And this way we're integrating our lives together closer so we can have access to these things on a regular basis. We don't have to put the kids in the car and drive them to the forest preserve. They can go outside and find a toad and a frog and have these things close by to home. Rain gardens are just a term that we use for growing wet-loving plants in a wet spot. And it's not that difficult. The plants will find a way to survive if we give them what they need. I'll show you some pictures and how we did it here. On the McDonald farm, we dug a depression area. And if you can see in the back right, we put a rubber mat by the foundation so that the water doesn't go into the basement, and it drains out, down and out into this basin that we created. And we plant the basin with the wet-loving plants. The area in the bottom of the basin where I'm standing is lower and will be wetter, so we plant wet-loving ones there, and the areas around the edges will be taller, higher, and drier, and we plant drier-loving species up there. From this dirt mess, we get, voila, a beautiful rain garden. And it's functioning and absorbing water. We don't have to mow it, and it's bringing birds and butterflies. I saw a hummingbird today working in the rain garden. A bioswale is a linear rain garden. If you can think of it instead of a ditch, we're going to call it a bioswale. It's a functional ditch. And the parking lot in this particular case is draining into this ditch. And the native plants in the ditch are absorbing all the water and utilizing that water to grow. If you're not going to catch it in plants, you can infiltrate it with, this is called a dry well, or a French drain is another name for it. And you slow it down, bounce it off of rocks, and you allow the water to infiltrate back into the ground rather than run off. Another thing to use is rain barrels. I've now exceeded 11,000 we've sold so far, but rain barrels are a simple way of catching water that anybody could do in their home. And we bring the information to people that rainwater is better for your plants. Your plants will grow better. It's good for your dog and wash your car. They used to wash their hair with it. It's soft water. And it's very clean and free. So by catching the rain and thinking of rain as a resource that we want to save, will help us to solve some of the problems we're having in the environment too, because it's not running off, it's being captured. If you wanted something on a larger scale than a rain barrel, we can do that too. Or if you thought that rain barrels are ugly, we can paint them. So there's always an answer for these things. The larger scale rain harvesting system now is what they used to call a cistern. The old cisterns were made out of concrete, and they would crack and heave with the freeze and thaw cycles. The new ones have a soft rubber liner that is flexible and can hold water throughout the winter. The one at the McDonald farm, this is a cutaway of it. It's beautiful. There's a little creek running and it falls back into the ground. And we've had deer drinking out of it and raccoons and birds swimming in it. And we can flip a switch and, like in this picture, we can irrigate with that. So we irrigate our children's gardens and we put it on our other plants that we want to water using rainwater. So there's no additional watering having to be purchased. We also are working on a system to bring this water into the house, our offices, and use it to flush toilets. So there could be a variety of other uses for rainwater. We also have a larger system. This one is 25,000 gallons. It's 40 feet square by 7 feet deep. And it captures water from the dairy barn and the granary, the old dairy barns, and all of the water is captured and held underground in a tank, the soft rubber liner keeping it in, and we can pump it out onto the organic vegetable fields and use rainwater far after the rain has stopped. So on the left, you see pictures. I go out to properties and I walk them with people and I help people with their landscapes. This is, on the left, is often what I see. Eroded shorelines. You have the milfoil and algae growing in the water. Geese usually everywhere. And it smells. There's sometimes dead fish. And what would it, if I'm going to fix that broken system, what it would look like? So to the right, you can see a naturalized shoreline, how pretty it can be, how functional. You have no geese, you have no erosion, and the deep roots are taking care of a lot of problems even with the water quality. On other areas, this would be a way to do it along a roadside. So we keep some grass along the roadside so we have a clear view. We can see if there's deer or other obstacles alongside the road, and yet in the ditch where the water is going to run and up the other side, we can have these native plants create butterfly habitat, create places for birds and snakes and deer or rabbits to have some habitat and have some food sources to us in these areas that are really not being used for any kind of recreational purposes. This is kind of unused land, and we're creating habitat for other things other than just our own use and saving money. We've got to work on understanding how to manage these native areas. There's an opportunity for people to learn about native area management and how it works. The reason the fire is effective is because the native plants have deep roots and they've lived in a regime of fire. So fire basically helps the native plants, they're used to it, and it kills off all the weeds, the unwanted native plants, or not native, unwanted non-evolved plants get burned up. And it's a very important strategy to use fire as a technique of management. So we have a lot to educate people about how to utilize these services that are cheap to maintain and very effective if done well. So this is a site in Aurora, and it was next to this factory and there was no use for it. So they told people in the factory, you can go out and enjoy that if you'd like. And no one would want to go out there. Why would you want to go there? What's out there for me? And it's not just what's out there for people, and which was nothing, but there's nothing out there for birds, there's nothing out there for butterflies, and it was converted. Right now they have picnic tables out there, and people go out and enjoy it and have lunch, and they can smell the smells of the prairie and hear the buzzing of the different bugs. There's a path they can walk through and stroll around and enjoy the area. There's picnic tables they put out there for people to have their lunch outside. And they've even found that productivity is increased when people get away from their computer screen and go outside and breathe and get the sunshine on their face. When they come back to work, they're rejuvenated to some degree, and their productivity increases also. So it's good for all. This is an area of Riverside Brookfield High School right behind the Brookfield Zoo. This was the children's study area, and nobody comes out there to study right now. So what can we do? Boom. You improve the landscape. You bring life back to the site. You create habitat for a variety of birds and butterflies, which are attractive to people to see and understand that they're not the only thing out there, that you share the space with other creatures of the earth, and it becomes an inviting place to go study. Isn't this a pretty space? Another school, flat roof with a downspout taking that nasty water away, and boom, we change it. And immediately there's toads and frogs and crickets and different life that returns. The students were picking the flowers and giving them to their teachers. A lot of positive things going on when we convert this. Oak Brook Library. I got a call because the students won't look out the window. Well, what did you give them to look at? What interesting thing is there for them to gaze out upon these big glass windows? So we converted, and we put in logs and bird baths and bird feeders and places for critters to hide. And immediately there were chipmunks and crickets and toads, and life returned. So people started looking out the window again and understanding that when you create a place for nature, that nature will be happy and take it back from you. We're building these kind of goofy situations where 6-inch raised curb, and we put the plants at the top of the hill, and we expect them to flourish in this dry condition up here. And a bioswale to the right, all the water from that site is kept into the ditch and utilized on the site by plants. We've had a variety of certifications for like the Shed Aquarium. The Shed Aquarium is thought of as a building for fish, but it's also much more. That they're paying attention to the fact that there are thousands of birds migrating, and you can feed the birds and allow some habitat there. There's a question that in some areas of DuPage County, they want to plant natives, but there's ordinances that don't let them plant. He's been threatened with fines. How we deal with it is we look at the ordinances and read the letter of the law and see what is restrictive. So sometimes it's been the fact that the person coming out to check doesn't know their plants and thinks it's a weed when it's really a native plant. So sometimes there's some education. Sometimes there's rules. When I was working on one, the rule said that it had to be a cultivated plant in a confined garden space. So we made sure that there was a definite edge around the garden. And the definition of cultivated plants means that they can be purchased at a garden center. So we showed the officer that these plants are indeed ones that you can buy, and they're not invasive species, and that they can be used in a positive way in a garden. So you have shrubs and trees in your yard now and other plantings like hosta and daylilies. So it's just a matter of substituting these ones that have more function. So we can help with those kinds of things. That's one of the things we do in DuPage County. DuPage County actually pays us to help homeowners with some issues, especially stormwater issues are a huge problem with with the water that we're generating off of our homes. And so using those in rain gardens and native areas is a very positive thing that the county actually is compensating us to do, help homeowners with. So that's what I'm trying to do, and you can achieve yard signs like this by utilizing the things I've talked about today. And again, we have the Conservation at Work program that can be utilized in commercial sites, so we can help anybody implement some of these programs that will be beneficial for water conservation as well as improving wildlife habitat. And this is the time, if anybody has any other questions, that I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. I've been doing this for about 10 years, and I'm not a botanist, I'm a salesman, I'm a marketing MBA. But I found that people don't want all this mumbo jumbo. If I told you Asclepias tuberosa, they want the simple ways. They want things that are easy. And I have brochures, native plant guides, a variety of different tools. You can go on our website, which is www.theconservationfoundation.org. We have opportunities to volunteer. We have events going on at the McDonald Farm in Naperville as well as other communities. We work with a variety of communities on rain barrel sales, areas in Elgin and all over King County. Kendall, DuPage, Will are having our rain barrel programming to help with that. We have a storm drain stenciling program where you can stencil the street and it says, "Dump no waste, drains to river," to tell people that if it goes in that storm drain, it's going right into the river, unfiltered, nobody's cleaning it, it's just pollution going in, and we have to pay attention to what is leaking in to the storm drains in front of our homes. Well, if there aren't any other questions, then I thank you for listening. If there's anything I can do, I'd be more than happy to answer your questions, and my information can be easily gotten from the website, theconservationfoundation.org. Again, my name is Jim Kleinwachter, and the link to my email and phone numbers are on the website. Thank you.